You woke up this morning believing you were free. You went to work, paid your bills, scrolled through your phone, and made choices you thought were yours. But what if every single decision you made today was already planned for you? The greatest prison is the one you cannot see. Control isn't maintained through force anymore. There are no chains around your wrists, no guards watching your every move. The new prison has no walls because the walls are inside your mind. Distraction, division, deception. These are the three pillars of modern control, and the most terrifying part. You're not just a prisoner, you've become your own warden. Today, we're going to expose the game they've been playing. A game where the rules change just enough to keep you playing, but never winning. By the end of this video, you'll see the invisible strings, and once you see them, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. You'll never be controlled the same way again. The invisible cage. In 1785, philosopher Jeremy Bentham designed a prison called the Panopticon. The concept was revolutionary and terrifying. A circular building where a single guard in the center could watch every prisoner, but the prisoners could never tell if they were being watched. The genius was this. Eventually, the prisoners would behave as if they were always being watched. They became their own guards. Sound familiar? Your phone tracks your location. Your searches are monitored. Your purchases are analyzed. But here's what they don't tell you. They don't need to watch everyone all the time. They just need you to believe they might be. The French philosopher Michel Foucault studied this phenomenon extensively. He concluded that modern society functions exactly like Bentham's prison. Visibility is a trap. We self-censor. We conform. We follow unwritten rules because somewhere in the back of our minds we fear being seen stepping out of line. The cage isn't made of steel bars anymore. It's made of algorithms, social expectations, and the paralyzing fear of judgment. And the cruelest part, they didn't build this cage. We helped construct it, one social media post at a time. But this is just the foundation. What comes next is how they keep you distracted from even noticing the bars. Engineered distraction. Have you ever reached for your phone without knowing why? You weren't looking for anything specific. Your hand just moved on its own. That's not an accident. It's engineering. In 2017, former Google design ethicist Tristan Harris revealed something shocking. He explained that your phone is designed like a slot machine. Every notification, every refresh, every like triggers a small dopamine hit in your brain. The same chemical released during gambling. They are programming people to maximize addiction. The average person checks their phone over 150 times per day. That's not weakness. That's the result of billions of dollars spent by the brightest minds on the planet to capture your attention. But attention is just a resource. What are they really stealing? Your time, your focus, your ability to think deeply about the things that actually matter. Ancient philosophers like Seneca warned us about this 2,000 years ago. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. They knew that a distracted population cannot question, cannot organize, cannot resist. If this is changing how you see your daily habits, hit like and subscribe because we're just scratching the surface. The distraction is just the first layer. The next tool they use is far more sinister. Divide and conquer. There's a reason you feel like the world is more divided than ever, because it is, and it's not by accident. The strategy is as old as empires themselves. When Julius Caesar conquered Gaul, he didn't defeat all the tribes at once. He turned them against each other. The Romans called it divide et impera, divide and rule. Today, the divisions are manufactured at industrial scale. Left versus right, young versus old, urban versus rural, us versus them. Every algorithm that shows you content designed to make you angry at the other side is performing the same ancient function. A Stanford study in 2022 found that social media algorithms actively promote content that triggers moral outrage. Not because it's true, because angry people stay online longer. They click more. They engage more. Your rage is profitable. Your division is the product. Marcus Aurelius understood this danger even as a Roman emperor. The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. When you're busy hating your neighbor, you don't have time to question who taught you to hate them. Distraction. While you argue about which side is right, both sides lose, and someone else wins. But division alone isn't enough to maintain control. They need something even more subtle. The moving goalposts. You've worked hard your entire life. You followed the rules. You did everything you were told. And yet somehow success keeps slipping just out of reach. That's not your failure, that's the game. The rules are designed to change just as you're about to win. In the 1950s, a house cost about twice the average annual salary. Today, it costs 8 to 10 times more. But the narrative hasn't changed. You're still told to work hard, save money, and success will follow. The rules changed, but nobody updated the instructions. This creates something psychologists call learned helplessness. When animals are consistently prevented from escaping discomfort, they eventually stop trying. Even when the cage door opens, the American dream was never meant to be a lie. It was meant to be a carrot, always visible, always possible, always just out of reach. As the philosopher Albert Camus observed, the absurd is born of the confrontation between human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. You keep playing because you see others winning, but those winners are held up specifically to make you believe you could be next. The lottery shows its winners for a reason. They need you to keep buying tickets. Hope is the cruelest chain. The moving goalposts keep you running. But there's another mechanism that's even more effective at keeping you in line. Manufactured fear. Fear is the oldest tool of control in human history. But modern fear is different. It's constant, it's everywhere, and it's carefully calibrated. Turn on the news. What do you see? Crime, disaster, economic collapse, threats from every direction. But here's a statistic that might surprise you. Violent crime in most developed countries has been declining for decades. The world is statistically safer than at any point in human history. Yet we've never felt more afraid. This disconnect isn't accidental. Fear sells. Fear keeps you watching. And most importantly, fear makes you controllable. When you're afraid, your brain shifts into survival mode. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for critical thinking, becomes less active. The amygdala, the fear center, takes over. 1. Fearful people don't question authority. 2. Fearful people accept restrictions. 3. Fearful people consume more. 4. Fearful people don't organize. The philosopher Bertrand Russell saw this clearly. Neither a man, nor a crowd, nor a nation can be trusted to act humanely, or to think sanely under the influence of a great fear. A population in constant low-level panic is a population that will accept almost anything in exchange for safety. Fear is the mind killer that opens every cage door to more cages. They've perfected the art of keeping you just scared enough to obey. But fear needs a companion to truly work. The debt trap. Ancient slaves were bound by chains. Modern slaves are bound by debt. It's the same principle with better marketing. Think about it. Most people spend the majority of their waking hours working, not because they love their jobs, because they have to. Mortgage, car payment, student loans, credit cards. You are free to quit any job you want as long as you never actually do. The average American household carries over $90,000 in debt. That's not financial mismanagement on a mass scale. That's systemic design. In the 1970s, wages stopped keeping pace with productivity. The gap was filled with credit. You could still buy the house, the car, the lifestyle. You just had to borrow it. Own nothing, owe everything. The philosopher Rousseau warned us centuries ago. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. He couldn't have imagined chains made of interest rates and minimum payments. Debt doesn't just take your money. It takes your options. It takes your ability to say no. It takes your freedom to walk away from situations that harm you. A person in debt is a person who must comply, and that's exactly the point. But debt is just one form of dependency they've created. Artificial scarcity. We produce enough food to feed 10 billion people, yet millions starve. We have empty homes numbering in the millions while homelessness rises. This isn't a resource problem. It's an artificial scarcity problem. Scarcity drives value. If diamonds were as common as sand, they'd be worthless. So certain interests ensure that essential things remain scarce, or at least feel scarce. Limited time offer, only 3 left in stock, act now before it's gone. These phrases aren't informational. They are psychological triggers. The fear of missing out is hardwired into our brains from evolutionary survival. When resources were truly scarce, hesitation meant death. Now that instinct is weaponized against us daily. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. The Stoics understood that the perception of scarcity is the real prison. Enough exists for everyone, but if you knew that, you'd stop competing so desperately. You'd stop sacrificing your health, your relationships, your values for more. The system requires you to believe there isn't enough, because people who believe in scarcity are easier to control than people who recognize abundance. Abundance, the truth is there's enough, but knowing that changes everything. Speaking of things they don't want you to know. Controlled opposition. What if the voices telling you to resist were part of the plan? This is perhaps the most sophisticated tool of control ever devised. Controlled opposition. The concept is simple but devastating. When people become too restless, you don't suppress their rebellion. You lead it into a dead end. The best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. This quote is often attributed to Lenin. Regardless of its true origin, the principle is timeless. Every revolution that threatens real change gets co-opted. The energy gets redirected into approved channels. Buy this product to fight the system. Vote for this candidate to change everything. Wear this symbol to show you're awake. Rebellion becomes another consumer choice. Resistance becomes another brand. The philosopher Slavoj Žižek calls this interpassivity. The system provides us with prepackaged rebellion so we can feel like we're fighting without actually threatening anything. It is easier to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism. Fake choices everywhere. You think you're choosing between options, but all the options lead to the same place. The game is rigged, and that leads us to perhaps the darkest mechanism of all. Identity capture. The final level of control isn't over your actions. It's over your identity itself. They've learned that if they can capture who you think you are, they never need to force you to do anything. You'll enforce the rules yourself. You are what you buy. You are your job title. You are your political party. Every label you accept becomes a cage. Because once you identify as something, you must defend it. You must consume products that match it. You must reject ideas that threaten it. The psychologist Carl Jung warned about this trap. The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself as well as others think one is. The persona, the mask we wear, becomes more real to us than our actual selves. 1. Your social identity determines what you buy. 2. It determines who you associate with. 3. It determines what ideas you accept. 4. It becomes your cage disguised as freedom. Think about how fiercely people defend their chosen identities. Brand loyalty, political affiliation, social group membership. When your cage becomes your identity, you will defend it to the death. They captured yourself. This is the end game. When control becomes self-control, when the prison becomes home, when the chains become jewelry. But here's what they never counted on. Breaking the spell. You've seen the game now. The invisible cage, the engineered distractions, the manufactured divisions, the moving goalposts, the cultivated fear, the debt chains, the artificial scarcity, the controlled opposition, the captured identity. Awareness is the first step toward liberation. And here's what terrifies them most. Once you see the strings, they lose their power. The matrix only works on those who don't know they are in it. Plato described this perfectly with his allegory of the cave. We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy is when men are afraid of the light. The prisoners who had only seen shadows their entire lives thought the shadows were reality. When one escaped and saw the sun, everything changed. You are the one awake. You cannot be fully controlled once you understand the game. You can reduce your dependencies. You can question the divisions. You can recognize fear for the tool it is. You can build real community instead of artificial tribes. The game only works if you keep playing by their rules. Stop playing. The moment you opt out, even mentally, the spell begins to break. And that's the one thing they can never control: your awareness. They spent centuries perfecting this system. They built prisons without walls. They created chains that feel like freedom. They manufactured a reality so convincing that most people will defend it with their lives. But they made one fatal miscalculation. The truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable. They assumed you would never look. They assumed the distractions would be enough. They assumed the fear would keep you paralyzed. They were wrong about you. You saw through the illusion, and that changes everything. The game continues. It will continue long after we're gone. But now you know the rules. And a player who knows the rules can choose not to play, or better yet, can play a different game entirely. Create your own rules. If you made it this far, comment "spell broken" to prove you're among the awakened few who see through the illusion. The truth is never comfortable, but it's always worth knowing. History has more to teach us. Subscribe if you want to learn. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant.